A Java code base flooded with statics can be wicked at times. Have you ever tried to write unit tests and got punched in the face by static methods? Perhaps you thought mocking was easy until you ran into a static utility and then you realized Mockito doesn't support this. You see the wickedness of statics by the fact that somebody had to go out and write something special for statics in the form of PowerMock. You're also about to find out that you do not need PowerMock anymore, as Mockito supports statics ever since version 3.4.0. And at a high level, Mockito is all about simulating behavior in your tests without relying on real implementations. And that means you mock something when the real implementation is slow or it's hard to trigger. Perhaps it has side effects, or for cases where you're talking to the outside world like databases, web services, and file systems. Normally in Java, you mock dependencies injected into your class, which is very easy. But when somebody makes something statics, things get ugly. And here's my take. Statics are dangerous, especially in business logic. They break OOP principles. You can't override nor extend them. You can't inject or swap them in tests. You can't isolate behavior. And they often lead to shared state, which means flaky tests. And as I said earlier, the likes of PowerMock were literally created just to deal with the static pain. That alone tells you everything. So now let's dive in. So we'll start off with the dependency, and for that we'll use version 5.17.0, and the next thing you'll need to do is just bring in the actual dependency, which also uses the version specified earlier. And we can now jump into the code. So let's look at a real-world example, which you'll probably recognize. We've got an AuthTokenProvider class here, and we simply want to get the current user. And the logic for that could be coming from external providers or services. Things like remote servers via HTTP, perhaps databases, or even an LDAP directory, and many more. And as you've experienced, because this method is static, it is not mockable by default. So let's get closer to the problem here. We've got another class, which is the service that we want to test. And the purpose of the service is to really just generate audit logs. But now it depends on the static method that we've been struggling to mock. So then let's write test for this and mock the static method cleanly. Cool, so here we are with our test case, and there are two ways you can achieve this for statics. So the first one that we're going to look at is the try with resources, which is the preferred approach. So we'll then start with the test case and say should audit log using try with resources. And for that, we're going to start with a try, and within our try, we're going to go with a mock static of the AuthTokenProvider. Can just quickly clean that up. Gonna rename this to mocked, and now we can mock the behavior of the static. So with our mock static, we can now continue with the normal stubbing process of Mockito as you know it. So this will be something like the following: normal Mockito stubbing to say when this static method gets called, then return a dummy value for our test. And since we've done our stubbing, we can then initialize our audit service, and I'll just quickly rename this to just service. And now we can do the actual call here. We'll just have an action of update user and assign this to a variable and name it result. And finally, we can do our assertions, which will be something like this. Some quick cleanup there, and that's it. We are now ready to run our test. And here we go, our test has passed. As mentioned earlier, this is the preferred approach, and it's simply because the tests are scoped, clean, and safe. So all this is isolated to a single test. There are no side effects on other tests, and it's simple to understand. And the downside is that this is slightly more verbose if you need to mock this in many tests. So let's look at another approach. This is the global version, and it's used when many tests need the same static behavior. So to get started, we'll have a static global variable, which will still be our static AuthTokenProvider. Just rename this to a static mock. The next step is to initialize the static mock. And for that, we'll use the before all to mock it once and globally. So for that, we'll do the same thing we did within our try with resources example. And we can just quickly copy this stubbing and we can make it a little bit more interesting with a different return value. So the try with resources was good because it also closed up our mocks. In this case, we have to do it manually. So that means we can say static mock close, so that after we use it, we can then close the mock. And now we can implement our new test method, should generate audit logs. And now all we have to do is just do the same thing again. Can make it more interesting with the different action. And next, we can update our asset. And that's it. So we are ready to run this test case. And here we go. And that's it. The advantages of this second global version is that you can reuse your mock setups and there's less boilerplate across tests. But the downsides are there's risk of test pollution if not closed properly, and it's harder to maintain in large test suites. And the last one is this can lead to shared state bugs if multiple tests change expectations. So when to use which, you might ask. My advice, use this try with resources by default. It's safe and it's localized. And only use these global mocks when you're writing many tests that rely on exactly the same static behavior. And with that, never forget to close your global static mocks. They live beyond the test unless explicitly closed. So, static methods aren't bad in every case, but they do make unit testing harder. If you can avoid them in business logic, then do it. Use interfaces, services, and dependency injection. But if you're stuck with legacy or static heavy utilities, Mockito gives you a powerful modern tool to stay productive and clean. So if you've been bitten by static methods before, comment below. Would love to hear your story. Like, follow, share, and subscribe. I will see you in the next video.